The year was 1996. Pokemon Red and Blue had just come out for the Game Boy, bringing a bunch of new, fun ideas to the industry. Game Freak was all like, hey, that went pretty well. I've got an idea. Let's do the exact same thing for the rest of time. And so the Pokemon formula was born. 100 years passed and Game Freak and I discovered the new Pokemon, a Dark Souls game disguised with the Pokemon logo, Pokémon Legends Arceus. Finding myself in a dark void, Zelda called out to us, warning me that this was not my average Dark Souls adventure. I reached for my phone to call 911, but failed to grab it before it floated away and God appeared to reshape it in his image. He answered 0% of my questions and then sent me into a strange new world. I woke up the same way that many people love to wake up, being greeted by a man I had never met. He told me that I fell out of the Fortnite rift overhead in the distance. But if the rift is above Mount Coronet and I fell out of it, how did I land here on the beach, miles from the foot of the mountain? After 12 minutes of dialogue, I finally gained control over my character, only to find that hold on. This feels good. Yep. Despite all expectations, Game Freak actually managed to make character movement feel satisfying. Pokemon's supposed to feel like dog shit, everyone knows it. My lack of consideration for the laws of physics caused his Pokemon to flee in fear. The man told me that he was a professor and let me hold his balls to help round up the escaped Pokemon. One after the other, I trapped them in spheres and returned to the professor. He exclaimed that the skill I displayed with his balls was like nothing he had ever seen, and escorted me to his town so that I could help him with Pokemon research. It's at this point that the game commits its first sin, making an interactive cutscene where all you do is walk behind someone while they talk. The mentioned quest marker took me to meet Benny, the town cook, who's only gonna play a small role in the story, I'm sure. Coming from behind me, Lucas introduced himself and mentioned that he had been drubbed by a Pokemon. Cyrus from Team Galactic came to confront me and see if I was the kind of material worthy of joining their team. She greeted me by immediately guessing that I was about 15 years old. She must have been correct because I didn't have anything to say about it myself. We ate some food from Benny to end off the day, and Cyrus gave me an entire house to live in. That's right, 15 years old, mortgage, full-time job, and I've only been here for 28 minutes. But this is still a realistic game. None of it was gonna come free. She told me that I would need to complete a trial to earn it all. If I succeed, I get to stay in my home and get the job in the Survey Corps. And if I fail, you will be expelled from the village to meet your fate, and perhaps your death. That's right. You know this game is gonna be real when Pokemon acknowledges death as something that exists. Going to sleep, we got a cutscene showing an energy buildup that manifested into a bolt of lightning that struck a really big tree. On the way to start my challenge, after waking up the next morning, we overheard the trauma stories of somebody in a room off screen who had been attacked by a swarm of Pokemon. I'm pretty sure they also implied that whoever's in here is like dying, because they tell him not to give up and keep his eyes open. So, E for everyone, guys. Cyrus told me that all I had to do was catch 3 separate species of Pokemon. Knowing this would be a challenge like no other, the professor offered to give me one of the Pokemon he had earlier. I teased the other 2, making them think they might be lucky enough to get chosen, but I never had any intention of choosing any Pokemon other than the Rowlet, because, come on, Decidueye, come on. Come on. It took 45 minutes, but it's finally looking like some real gameplay is gonna happen. On my way out of town, Lucas introduced me to Volo, who looks suspiciously familiar. He challenged me to my very first Pokemon battle. I talked some trash to let him know who would win before the fight. Oh no, this thing's ass, dude. Togepi wasn't the most threatening of opponents, so the battle was decided in my favor, and I was ready to move on to finally start the real gameplay. I spoke to the man near the gate, and this is when the game committed its second sin. Hold on. Am I just gonna warp where I click? What the f? All the areas in the overworld are 0% connected. Instead of being able to walk where I want to go, or even fast travel using my map, I have to run all the way to the edge of town, talk to this guy, tell him where I want to go, wait in a loading screen, then just show up there. It seems like a small thing, but it really does change how the entire world feels. Lucas spoke to me for a few minutes when I got to the camp, but finally let me go so I could get to the gameplay. Oh, you're just gonna walk over there and wait to get more dialogue with me? Okay, cool. He told me how to catch Pokemon and then let me go to do it for myself. I can finally do this. This one thing. I can finally do this one thing that he told me how to do just now, and oh my god, is that him waiting to get in another conversation. I'm not gonna drag this out because I think you get the idea. He did this about 3 more times, each more excruciating than the last. My problem with it is that after he spent way too long telling me how to do something, the game showed me an info card that told me the same thing. I consider this the game's 3rd sin. Let's put all this behind us though. At least we're finally in the field, and as soon as we're finished with these cutscenes, we'll have our chance to get to the real gameplay. Alright, we're done. We're gonna take a photo to commemorate the moment. We're going back to the village. Okay. fuck? Cyrus accepted me into the Survey Corps and gave me the proper clothing. I changed out of my cringy loser clothes back at home, then went back to headquarters where Cyrus gave me a bandana and told me to present myself to the commander. He introduced himself by telling me to face him in combat. I thought this was going to be a Pokemon battle, but actually the game wanted me to charge at him. I'd love to see something like this happen, but unfortunately the game faded to black so that Game Freak wouldn't have to make an unreusable cutscene. After all that, 1 hour and 16 minutes, I finally get to play the game. Before heading on my adventure, Lucas showed me how to dodge roll, which is really the only reason I can make Dark Souls jokes about this game. But I found it funny that after all this hand-holding, the game never actually told me the button I need to push to do the roll. It shows up on the left side of the screen, but I didn't see that at first, so I had to figure it out. With the world finally available to me, I went out and tried catching every Pokemon I saw. I caught some Bidoof and Starly, but I had to talk to Lucas again. Fuck. I ran off a small cliff accidentally, but safely floated very diagonally toward the ground, where I entered first-person mode to sneak up on a Shinx. It deflected my ball, forcing me to fight it in battle. My Rowlet used Leafage to get him below half health, to which he retaliated with 2 attacks. That's one of the new battle mechanics for the game. Depending on the speed of your Pokemon and the style of move you're using, Pokemon can sometimes get 2 moves in. And by sometimes, I mean I rarely get 2 moves in, and everyone else always gets 2 moves in. I caught it and then experienced the fantastic swimming system after falling off of a bridge. Since I can't swim myself apparently, I decided to try and catch this Weasel, but it deflected my ball and dragged me into another battle. Having added him to the dex, I'll say that despite the agonizing first hour of the game and the constant dialogue / handhold, pretty much as soon as I got to go out on my own and do whatever I wanted, I started having a ton of fun. All I did was catch Pokemon, collect berries, and use my Pokemon to mine ores, yet it had a certain feeling that was incredibly satisfying. Lucas was still waiting around to get in another conversation with me, but at least this time I could go off and do something before I talked to him. I stumbled upon my first alpha Pokemon soon after, an alpha Snorlax who I knew I couldn't catch, so I snuck around to investigate a shaking tree I saw in the distance that dropped a Pokemon when I gathered its berries. I spent around an hour exploring and catching before going back to report to the professor, who just waits at any nearby camps. Going back to Jubilife Village, I helped some townsfolk by showing them the Pokemon that I had caught in the wild, and then got my first star from Cyrus. From what I gathered, the star system is pretty much the same as getting a gym badge, except you get more stars the more you fill out your Pokedex. With another day in front of me, I sparred with Lucas's Pikachu and mentally sparred with the way his shadow was rendered in this scene. After a victory on my part, Lucas shared a type chart with me, which was really weird to see in an actual game, and probably something they should add to the mainline game. Back in the field for the next mission, we met with Marley, who needed me to handle an alpha Kricketune. I knew alpha Pokemon came in really high levels, so I just had to hope that this one was manageable. I decided to start off by taunting it using a ball of mud in my inventory, but couldn't even manage to hit it. It turned out to be level 12, which is good for me because Rowlet had made it to level 14 by this point. With the nuisance taken care of, the great Wordeer showed up to stare into my eyes, but left without even letting me ride him. Afterward, I met with the leaders of both the Diamond and the Pearl clans who couldn't seem to get along. Cyrus's Abra suffered from low frame rate syndrome, but nobody seemed to notice but me. The leaders of the clans talked about how their sacred Pokemon Cleaver was in a frenzy that needed to be stopped. I volunteered to stop it since neither clan was politically able to do it themselves. I wasn't tracking the story too well at this point, so I kinda just rolled with it. On the way there, I almost walked right into an Alpha Lopunny, which was one of the scariest moments of my life. Running away from it, I stumbled into none other than a shiny Baneri that I no doubt had to catch. The odds for a shiny in this game are a lot higher, but I didn't know that at the time, so I really thought that I was the coolest kid in town for a second. Until I went over to check on a fellow streamer DGod63's stream, and the first thing he did was show me his shiny Geodude. I met with a Pearl Clan member guarding the area where Cleaver lives who challenged me to a battle to test my mettle before allowing me to pass. I beat him, and he still didn't let me pass. But I did the right thing, and instead of getting in a fight, I walked away. On my way out, the ARC phone began to beep and told me that a mysterious power now enables me to travel between base camps instantly. It's weird that it took me 4 hours of gameplay to unlock fast traveling, but somehow even more weird that they felt the need to justify and explain how I can fast travel. And the best they came up with was that a mysterious power did it. I also found out that Pokemon don't evolve on their own anymore, so I had to force all of them to evolve manually, whether they liked it or not. The Diamond Clan leader stopped me at the Heights camp where I reunited with Wordeer. He yelled at at my face, and then we were best friends. Instinct immediately drew me to Skyrim horse climb my way out of the area, but I found that it doesn't really work the same as it does in those games. Coming back to the big tree, I still had the little cowboy to get through, so I forced my way past him to fight the boss. I made a bunch of bombs designed to calm the Pokemon and started the battle. Instead of using Pokemon to fight the bosses in these games, you have to roll up your sleeves, get some dirt on your hands, and go a few rounds with it yourself. He used his pure brightness to blind me, giving him an edge in combat, but I wasn't gonna let that slide. Throwing bomb after bomb at him, slowly depleting his frenzy gauge at the top, he charged me with his axe hands repeatedly, and the longer I spent in this fight, the more fun I had. I threw the last bomb and calmed him, reverting it to its original form. I got the insect plate and rubbed my victory in the Pearl Clan's stupid little faces. When I got back to town, the commanders told me about the next frenzied Pokemon who was in the Crimson Mirelands. I made my way to the area, then Wordeer and I traveled across the land to find a Carnivine as my first encounter. Then a Pikachu soon after, who I ended up having to battle, but was able to catch with one ball. I wanted to see how well Wordeer could swim, but as soon as we touched the water, he pulled a... and swimming struck again. Inside a giant cave they tried to make me believe was Salacion ruins, I met an old lady who said I was cringe, and that she didn't want to talk to me because she lost a big flat rock. I went out to find it myself with Wordeer and ran into the perpetrators who had stolen it after I found their burned up campfire. I beat one of them in a battle, causing all of them to relinquish the rock to me and run away. Returning it to the old lady and proving to her that I wasn't in fact cringe, I forced her to let me beat up her Pokemon and then let me ride it whenever I wanted. I used Ursaluna's sniffing capabilities to find Commander Mars, who had hurt her ankle while transporting the bombs I need to defeat the next frenzy Pokemon. Helping her out and taking the bombs, I rode Wordeer to the shrine where the boss hung out. In the battle arena, the fog cleared away in a tornado and Lilligant appeared for our fight. It danced in front of me to express its lack of fear, but I wasn't intimidated by this hollow tactic. I Dark Souls dodged my way out of every one of its attacks, only being hit a few times. After getting its frenzy gauge to half, it started sending out waves of energy that were easy enough to dodge. I got hit a couple of times during the final stretch and made it pretty close to dying, but was able to throw the last bomb to end its frenzy. The Diamond Clan congratulated me on my victory, and I spent some more time catching Pokemon in the area before leaving. Returning to Cyrus and getting a new star for my rank, I learned that the types of balls you're permitted to use by the Survey Corps are dependent on the star rank you have at the time. Moving on to cure the next noble Pokemon of its disgusting impurities, I headed on my way toward the Cobalt Coastlands, where I was met by Irida, who serenaded me with her flute skills, hoping to win my hand in union. I told her that her abilities with the flute were subpar, and I settle for nothing less than the best, so she challenged me to a battle in anger. Anger turned to shame when I defeated her, and we agreed to never mention it again. I started in the new area like I do most, by imprisoning as many little monsters and balls as I could. The next unimportant NPC that the game forced me to meet was Iskan. He served in helping me to get the next mount, Basculegion. He told me that in order to make the food necessary to please Basculegion, I needed to catch a Dusclops and infuse his energy with the snack. Dusclops probably had something to do with Iskan's hand injuries, because he told me he was far too afraid to go catch one himself. He told me that Dusclops could be found in the Deadwood Haunt, which was the area that looks like a hand on my map. But how does he know I have a map on my Arc phone, if the Arc phone is a gift from God that only I have, and nobody has ever even seen technology in this universe? While on my way to catch Dusclops, I saved a bystander from a menacing Chatot and picked up a Duskull to help fill out the decks. Meeting back up with Iskan afterward, who had collected the other ingredients for the food, I ordered Dusclops to shoot his purple power into the cauldron to be cooked up. With the Basculegion food item in hand, I met Iskan by the water, where he called Basculegion to the shore and let me whistle at it. It showed itself to be a bit smaller than I remember, but we became instant friends. It carried me across the ocean to Firespit Island, where I struggled to catch Magmar. I made it to the shrine where the previous noble Pokemon's son evolved, becoming the new noble Pokemon right in front of me, only to conveniently and immediately get struck by the weight of his new responsibilities and fall into a frenzy. The newly nobled Arcanine asserted his dominance over me by performing a reverse Jesus and walking on lava. If that's not threatening, I do not know what is. I ended up dying to this one once, but not again, because the pattern for this fight was disgustingly exploitable. He only had like 2 attacks, and neither of them account for where I am except the dash going towards you. I found that if I stand on the edge of the platform near the lava, he won't dash towards you unless he's on the other side of the arena. After being defeated, he reverted to his original state, and I left the volcano to meet with Commander Kamado in his office, where the game introduces yet another character to us. Maybe it's just me, but does she look realistic? After I left, I noticed that Dartrix had an evolution available. Like I said earlier, I love Decidor. I love that he's green, I love that he's a flying type, I love his bow and arrow, and I love his what the f*** Heading on my way toward Mount Coronet to cure my next frenzy, I spoke with the professor who told me about the rift. An elderly pirate led me through a dark cave and used his spider senses to warn me of an alpha crobat around the corner. Leaving the cave brought me to a new area. Having caught the Pokemon I wanted here, I found myself repeating the painful cycle of, yet again, being stuck with an old man in a cave. Having journeyed with him basically up the entire mountain, he decided that he trusted me enough to lend me the help of his Sneasler. They put me in an itsy-bitsy basket, and Sneasler carried me all the way near the top of the mountain where I fought the realistic lady from earlier, whose performance in battle was almost as stinky as the Skuntank she used. Receiving only shame in her defeat, I moved my way toward the next shrine where I started my battle against the next Frenzy, who ended up being a Hisuian Electrode. This fight was fun, really fun. Not only did Electrode have significantly more moves compared to the other bosses, but he was also a lot harder. He terrifyingly stalks you for one move with a ball of electricity circling around him, and for another, Voltorb fall from the sky and explode on you. What makes it really hard is that there's a small ball of electricity that follows you around almost the entire fight, and it'll deal damage and stagger you if it connects. I died once and found out that I could just continue the battle from where I left off. One of my skills as a pro gamer does include control over death, but it's still kind of defeats the purpose of dying if I can just retry without losing any progress. When I defeated him, he revealed his new Hisuian form to me and shrunk at least 3 sizes. And having defeated yet another Frenzy, I reported back to the commander. And guess what I did next? Got my orders and headed towards the next area to cure another Frenzy Pokemon. I loading screened my way onto the map, rode the battle bus towards my next stop, asked the boys where we were dropping, and found myself in the Alabaster Icelands. I caught a Glalie here to add to my team and trekked across the frozen tundra to meet the Iceman from Goop. He told me my squatting form was weak and politely showed me the correct way to do it, then told me about Avalugg, who was the next boss. When the workout was over, another new character showed herself to have a Braviary. I knew that this meant the paraglider was soon to come. I wanted the bird, so I did what I do best: chase children. She didn't think that I'd be able to reach her on top of a mountain, but she didn't anticipate my ability to sit in a box and let a Pokemon do all the work for me. She flew off once more in fear of my power, but she couldn't run forever. I found her at Snow Point Temple, where she ran inside to avoid the theft of her bird. For some reason, at this point, very late in the game, they decided it would be a good time to start throwing puzzles into the mix. I struggled with the answer to it for a while, despite it being pretty simple, because a couple of years ago, Game Freak started using new symbols to represent Pokemon types. I thought the symbol for rock was the steel symbol and vice versa, so I mixed up all the answers. The first door only required a combination of 3 types, so I actually made it through by guessing every combination until it worked. The second door required 5, and I still didn't know about the symbol mix-up, so I had to look the answer for the second door up before a member in my Twitch chat told me that I had mixed up the symbols. Guys, come follow me on Twitch. I've got a lot of great things going on right now, and if you're gamer enough, you could be the person in my next video that I refer to as a member in my chat. Knowing that she could run no longer, Bird Girl challenged me to a fight. For such an unthreatening appearance, it came as a surprise to see her send out Rhyperior, Magmortar, and Electivire, all at the same time. I switched out for a Mamoswine that I caught earlier, who ended up being the perfect counter for this trio, considering Rhyperior is 4 times weak to ice, and both the others are weak to ground. I defeated her entire team, with 1 move for each Pokemon, and with no more cards in her hand, she relinquished the bird. The Iceman told me where to go to find my next Frenzy battle, and when I got there, he provided the needed bombs for my fight. We stepped up to the platform where I was ready to face Avalugg. We've got like 12 hours of footage so far. So, oh my god. That's not what I remember Avalugg looking like. So he's kinda big, but that's no problem because I can still beat him with what I've got. This is also the fight where I learned you could send a Pokemon into battle with the Noble, and if you reduce its health to 0, its Frenzy meter will be significantly more vulnerable for a little bit afterward. Mamoswine pulled out another dub by using high horsepower to eat up the last of Avalugg's health, and it really does make a difference when it comes to how much damage the Noble takes from the bombs. I dodged all of his attacks, and before I knew it, he was defeated. In the shadow of my victory, the Iceman turned his head to the earth, now knowing the truth, that my squatting form was already perfect without him. In the eyes of the clan leaders, we had won. All the nobles had been unfrenzied, and the 2 clans were finally starting to get along. I went back to the village to have a celebratory dinner with Lucas and the professor, and then went to bed to end the challenge. And there it is. I stepped outside to find that the sky was covered in a close-up image of a CRT disguised as a world-ending event. I stepped into Kamado's office along with the clan leaders, where he accused me of being not the protagonist of the story. He knew that his role in the plot was very minimal up to this point, and in an attempt to steal the spotlight and hopefully get a spin-off game a few years down the line, he banished me from the village out of jealousy for my importance. Saddened by the fact that I had lost the lead role, I was escorted out of town by Cyrus and dropped in the Fieldlands camp. In order to clear my name, I confronted some old allies and devised a plan to visit the 3 lakes of Sinnoh to hopefully find answers. A Shinx walked up to me to get my attention and then ran back to its family to rub in my face the fact that I had nowhere to go, and it did. I made my way toward Lake Verity and then used my Shiga slate to move the boulder blocking the door. What I found inside was not a Misprit, but instead an Alpha Gudra. They turned my beloved Gudra into a snail for its Hisuian form, so I put it out of its misery quickly with Staraptor's close combat. Misprit thanked me for my service by testing my emotional state, concluding that I was very much stable. Very stable. I got Misprit's plume, then repeated the process with the other lake spirits before meeting back up with the cast at a ruin. The 3 lake spirits showed up, put those things they gave me in the crafting table, and made the red chain. Chain in hand, we made our way up to Mount Coronet after Lucas told us that the commander had taken the security corps up there to deal with the rift. Entering a cave that connects to the peak of the mountain, I continued my speedrunner behavior by running speedily right into a cutscene with Benny? But why is Benny here? He's just an innocent town cook, right? I am terrified. Somehow, a game with as little story as this pulled a twist at the end. Benny poofed himself into his ninja garb and sent out a mischievous while performing a sick backflip with his aging bones. More importantly than anything, he was hard. I was a little underleveled because I never really spent any time leveling up specifically, but it still took me 3 attempts to beat him. And even after this, I wasn't done. I walked past him and met with Kamado, who had prepared his wardrobe for this exact moment. The game has been pretty twisty lately, so you might not have seen this coming, but I had to fight him. And somehow, he was easier than Benny. Kamado rightfully bowed to me in his defeat, and then I walked up the stairs and through the halls of the temple that would inevitably become Spear Pillar. The wind started blowing and the gates started opening. Palkia. It stepped through the portal, spreading it harder than my uncle's spread. The red chain shattered immediately upon use, and I was dragged into battle. I had Magmar in my first slot, who immediately died to a Hydro Pump, but I switched out for Decidueye, who was able to counter it well enough and tank a special rend. Decidueye died, but Staraptor was ready to avenge his friend's death. A risky close combat could have killed it, but luckily left it with a sliver of health, giving me the perfect opportunity to start spamming balls. The first one failed, but even though Palkia isn't on the box for this game, it's still a box legendary, meaning super high catch rate, letting me catch it with the second ball. Palkia spoke to the Pearl Clan leader for some reason and told her that another one was coming. Wow, I wonder what Pokemon it'll be. Finally, a real legendary. Oh, Dialga. Despite my lack of surprise, Dialga is my preferred Sinnoh legendary, and this coming fight was a frenzy battle, so I was ready to get this started. But the story was not. They black screened me back to camp so that Game Freak could make up an excuse to get me bombs for the fight. The professor was conveniently able to develop a brand new kind of Pokeball using the fragments of the shattered red chains specifically designed for the task of capturing Dialga. Then I headed back to the peak of Mount Coronet to confront him. It began to frenzy up and exploded, knocking the roof right off the temple. Palkia jumped in front of my body to protect me from certain death, and Dialga began to reveal its new model. It was another frenzy battle, except Dialga sat in one spot and screamed at the sky. He was literally one of the easiest boss battles of the entire game. I dodged a bit, got his frenzy gauge down to 0, then I threw the red chain Pokeball at him and watched it do what it was designed for. Is that the red chain? The sky cleared and the rays of Arceus himself shone upon my skin, and that was Pokémon Legends Arceus. It was a tale of triumph, black screens covering up the complete lack of effort from my favorite childhood game series, and I didn't see Arceus once. I know it seems like I hated this game, but I actually loved it. It's the type of game where the tedious, raw gameplay is the fun part, which also happens to be the kind of gameplay that doesn't work well for videos. But that is the only fun part. How do you rate it? All of you are undoubtedly rushing to the comments right now to type. 6 out of 10. If you want to see these kind of things happen in real time and use a bunch of cool emotes that I just made, you can come check me out on Twitch. I hope you enjoyed my constant complaints, and I'll see you guys in 18 months.